Thank you everyone for joining eBound's Accessible Web PDF webinar today. We would like to begin today by acknowledging the land eBound's office is currently on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Now, to start your webinar, our technology specialist, Emma Cote, will take it away. Thank you, Emma.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So we'll be going over accessible web PDFs and the metadata associated with them. And please feel free to throw any questions in the chat if you have them. I'll also leave some time at the end for questions. And Elizabeth will be monitoring the chat. So for those of you that aren't familiar, eBound Canada is a not-for-profit organization. We are a small but mighty team of 4. And this is the 4 of us here. We've all been with eBound for quite a while now. So we are very happy to be continuing our work in the accessibility space. I'm sure our clients are aware, but just as a quick reminder, the services that eBound offers are eBound creation or sorry, ebook creation, or as we kind of refer to them as conversions. And that includes EPUBs and web PDFs, as well as distribution and marketing of those titles to all the major vendors. And then finally, what we fall under today, which is these 2 buckets of education and research into the publishing industry, as well as accessibility work and advocacy, which is what we're doing here today. I am the technology specialist, which is a fancy way of saying that I help get the metadata sorted out and all of the books appearing on the vendor sites as they should. And I also handle the small batch conversions for publishers. So today's goals, we really just want to, so we thought we'd do these few sessions leading up to the EAA date. We thought we'd do a few sessions specific to individual files. So today's goals are just to understand the accessible features in a web PDF. We've got a couple of caveats with that as well, and instructions on how to find those features and then what to do with them, right? So how to add those features and which features to add into the Onyx. So if you've been to any of our other sessions, they kind of are broad overviews. And in this session, we want to kind of focus in a little bit on just this one format type so you can get really clear samples and a really clear understanding of web PDFs and how to make them accessible and what to do with the metadata to show the end user what you've added to it. So the agenda, this is kind of a repeat of the previous slide, but this is the order that we are going to do it for anyone that likes to know what's to come. So we'll review the web PDF accessible features, and I'll show you some examples of what those features look like in action. And then we'll review the ways of adding accessible metadata to your Onyx file. Okay, for this session, we're not talking about schema because kind of our understanding is that if you're working with a partner that understands accessibility, which you absolutely should be for creating your ebook versions, they will know to add the schema metadata. And we're specifically talking in this section about Onyx. And then I'll share a kind of a step-by-step, really simplified plan for assessing the web PDFs and then offer ideas and a plan for moving forward. So again, feel free to jump in if you have any questions or anything along the way or throw them in the chat. Okay, so as I'm sure you already know, this EAA date is kind of looming on June 28th, 2025, and that will be the date that all books going to the EAA are meant to be accessible. So we still don't really have clarity on if that means, there's no real books are going to be pulled down by a certain date kind of, there's no firm understanding of that, but June 28th is the date when they're saying this is what you have to kind of do moving forward. So all reflowable EPUBs should be what Canada calls born accessible, meaning the idea of accessibility has been kind of ingrained in the entire process. So from even the birth of the print title, it's already going into editing and all of those stages as we're going to make sure that this is accessible when it comes out. So that means that that your workflow is also taking that into consideration, and that all titles coming out that are reflowable are born accessible. So that's fully accessible to that kind of worldwide standard, the WCAG AA. So fixed layout and web PDFs are still a little bit of a gray area, but the best thing that you can do and what is expected is that they should be made as accessible as possible with their Onyx features listed in the metadata. So the reason we say made as accessible as possible is because due to their very nature, their layout, fixed layout titles and web PDFs can't be made fully accessible to the same standard that a reflowable EPUB can. A reflowable EPUB is just that. It reflows naturally on its own. And web PDFs do have that capability as well, where you can zoom in and you can pick reflow if you're reading on a computer. But there are some differences in how you can access the web PDF, and you can't access it in the same way as a reflowable. So when we're talking about web PDF in this session today, essentially we're saying when we call it an accessible web PDF, it's really like an as accessible as possible web PDF, because web PDFs are never fully accessible to that same standard. So what that leaves us with is we want to make sure that conversion partners are creating as accessible as possible versions, not what they used to call standard PDFs. So standard PDFs, even as little as 5-6 years ago, didn't always take into consideration accessibility. So they would have been made to be fully functional on usually a computer or a laptop, and maybe on some other end user devices, depending on the device, but they weren't, accessibility wasn't at the forefront of what was being created. And I say 5-6 years because that's when we've seen at eBound a real increase in accessibility. That's when the grant funding was really being pushed in Canada, and 2024 was that end date in Canada for a lot of the grant funding for born accessible content. But if you're looking back through records, it would kind of be the difference between ordering a standard and an accessible web PDF. So again, many accessible features can be added to the web PDF file, and they may have been. So that's why this session is important, to kind of figure out how you can assess the web PDFs, because unless it was explicitly listed in when you were doing your conversions or ordering your web PDFs, it's really difficult to know what features were added. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of, well, there is no way that I've come across. Somebody please tell me if they do know a way to assess a number of web PDFs for free at the same time. We see that same sort of issue in the EPUB world. But we do have some solutions kind of coming in with EPUBs, but not so much with web PDFs from what I've seen. But again, it is really important to know what features are in them, make sure those features are included moving forward, and list them out for the end user and for the vendor who will be processing this information now. So how to find features in a web PDF. So this is really the best way to do it. And unfortunately, again, it is a title by title process, but this is quite a comprehensive check. And I'll go over kind of the two additional things that do need to be done manually. So again, we're putting our faith in your conversion partner here. So all of this is assuming that you have a conversion partner who does really know what they're doing with it when it comes to accessible as possible web PDFs. So in Acrobat, this is how you can check. So we're opening the individual web PDF file, and then clicking on all tools, view more, prepare for accessibility. So feel free to screenshot things as we go through here. I've got a couple of slides set up in that way so that you can actually do a screen grab so that you don't have to open up this slideshow and look at everything and search for what you want, but I will also send this slideshow out at the end. So once you've opened Prepare for Accessibility, check for accessibility and start checking, and it will spit out this here along the right-hand side of your screen. The only two things, so you can see it says on the right side there, it says pass, 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 that because it's checking in the background. So it's making sure that the images, if you look to the bottom right of the screen here, so we know that the images that are included have alt text, and we know that it doesn't really clarify here that this title does or doesn't have figures, but it is searching for that as well. And we don't know, it's not
How much
saying,
was beer?
I know for a fact that this one doesn't, the one that I used to create this didn't have forms in it, but it's essentially saying if it did have forms, there's nothing wrong with them. So you can trust in the screen, or sorry, trust in the report here. So no matter what, even if everything passed, it will always spit out these two individual manual checks. So logical reading order and color contrast. So the people at Adobe just haven't figured out, or it might just not work to do these two checks as a automated process, and that it needs to be a human, which is totally fine, a good thing to see every once in a while. So we will go over these two individual checks a little bit later in the presentation. And I'll show you what that means in Adobe. So this is if you're going to screenshot anything from today, screenshot this. So I made it nice and big so that you can really get the full idea of what you need here. So I hope that by this time, code list 196 from Onyx, which is what houses all of the accessible features, is fairly familiar. So all of these codes are from, or all of these features, I should say, are from code list 196. And these are these are a number of the values that could be from code 196, but these are the ones that apply specifically to web PDFs. And you'll see I noted at the bottom here, WCAG 2.2 or WCAG AA features from our interpretation cannot currently be added. So either of those features that are in code list 196, because not all criteria to be WCAG 2.2 or WCAG AA compliant can be met due to the nature of a web PDF. But, whoops, these are the ones that can be added. Now, don't worry if this is kind of not making a ton of sense right now. I'm going to go over each individual feature with an example here. With a little caveat again, please only use the feature that says O5 PDF UA1 if somebody experienced with accessibility made the web PDF. So this is, from my understanding, kind of a similar listing of WCAG 2.2, but it's specific to PDFs. Okay. So hopefully everyone is clear on the accessibility summary when it comes to EPUBs, but when it comes to a web PDF, you should still be including an accessibility summary in your metadata. It should be human readable language, meaning it shouldn't be super technical, because the end user, despite having a print disability, might not really be well versed in text speak. So it should be language that you or I or anyone can understand, because it should be inclusive language. So I thought what I'd do is and again, you can screen grab this, or I will send this out at the end of the presentation, but this is something you could use as a template for your accessibility summary. The idea is that it explains the features in the document without just listing and repeating the features that we're adding to the Onyx file, like all of the ones that we're going to go over next. But it does explain in that plain language what's in the book. And then it also mentions any deficiencies. So this web PDF includes some accessible features, and then I list them out in kind of a different way. Alternative text for images, bookmarks, which we'll go over in a second, and proper color contrast. And then I'm just explaining the deficiencies here. So due to the nature of web PDFs, this version does not meet all WCAG 2.1 or AA requirements. And this is my thinking here is mention whether a fully accessible EPUB version exists. So if you are making an EPUB version and you can find a way to make a reflowable EPUB of the same content, then mentioning it here is a really good idea. I believe it would be okay to add the ISBN as well of that EPUB if it does exist, but somebody please correct me if you know of that being an issue. But it is a really good, again, always opting for reflowable if possible, but I know that some vendors or some educational or academic publishers need to create web PDFs as well. So this is kind of the best that we can do on that front. Okay, so again, this is another feature that you would be adding. So what I've added here at the top, so 00 accessibility summary or 11 table of contents, those are the exact listings as they are in CoreSource. And this is kind of the issue with a lot of, well, all digital metadata and using different aggregators and things like that. Sometimes the Onyx use one terminology and CoreSource uses another, and then an Onyx provider uses another. So I'm using the CoreSource terminology that you will see in your dropdowns there. So 11 table of contents navigation. In a web PDF, it's a little bit different. The web PDF refers to it as bookmarks. So if you're in a web PDF file in Adobe, you'll see on the right-hand side when you click on what looks like kind of what we've come to know as the table of contents button, the bookmarks will pop up. So that table of contents or bookmarks should display the hierarchy of sections that nest under one another. I don't know if that's a really confusing thing to say or not, but essentially when we are looking at accessibility, we're making sure that the headings follow a certain pattern so that if someone is going through them, they're not going to be confused about chapter 1 and then part 1. So the settings have a hierarchy so that they nest under each other and that a person with print disabilities can kind of toggle back and forth. So here's an example of that I pulled from a project we're working on. So you can see the bookmarks popping up on the right-hand side here. And then though it's not listed outright, we know that the coding has been done correctly because these are, and if I actually click down further here, we can see that these are nesting inside of each other. So these are the heading 1s, and then we move over to heading 2, and then later in the book, inside, let's say, chapter 1, there might be some other sections kind of moving to the other side. So that proper hierarchy is really important. And if you see something like this, and also this is being checked in your accessibility report. So again, all of these things, all of these different features that I'm going over here that are on this page, as long as your web PDF passes that accessibility report that we went over in the beginning, then you know that you can add all of these features. Okay. And then, so I'm going in order on code list 196, and I'm just skipping any that in our interpretation don't apply to web PDF. So I'm skipping up to 13 now, single logical reading order. Any web PDF with bookmarks should also have this, but you can confirm inside Acrobat for this as well. So again, it means that the proper headings have been used and you can only navigate in one order. So back to that main page under all tools and prepare for accessibility. You can also click on fix reading order, even if you're just checking it. And then you can look on the side here. Oh, sorry. And then you're going to click show order panel and then look on the side here. And as long as the pages aren't all over the place with different numbers kind of popping in and out, then you know that that is working correctly as well. So this is the one that was the manual check. This is one of them. Okay. And then the next one is short or full alternative descriptions. We see this one kind of done incorrectly sometimes, where people think that they're supposed to include both. I always say short or full because if you don't need any images or if you don't need any alt text descriptions for kind of complex charts or images or graphs, then you can just use short. So short doesn't mean incomplete. It just means kind of normal length. You would use full in the sense of anything that has needs an extended description. Okay, so short really should be like normal, standard, something like that. And then full is used for extended. Um, Essentially, I've only seen full used for usually when there's a map or a really complex graph or chart that needs more than just a simple 250 character description. Um, okay, print equivalent page numbering. That's pretty easy to see in your PDF because it's listed on kind of the same area that it would be in the print document. Okay.
I don't include the
And
ice
then
cream.
number 22 is language tagging provided. So again, this one is a little bit misused or misunderstood sometimes. Um, in the PDF, similar to an EPUB, each page will have to be tagged. But language tagging is sometimes misinterpreted as only use this piece of metadata if you know that there are words in the document other than the main language. So let's say the book is primarily in English, but there's a few French phrases. They think they would only use the language tagging in that case, but our interpretation and what it says in the Onyx code is that it's either or. So you should always use this one because all of your pages should always be tagged. And again, if you ran your web PDF through that accessibility checker, it should have checked that the pages are tagged. So this is another one that you would want to use. Use of contrast. I'm actually going to show you. So I'm always trying to avoid going in and out of my slideshow, but I suppose it's really not a big deal for me to go in and out. I just wanted to show you the color contraster that I use. So I have it attached to my Chrome here. There's a number of them that you can get. This one's, so normally you would use this one on where it's somewhere where you can go on when you're scrolling on a website because you can still move around in the background. I can only show you the color contrast on this top part. Maybe I should have switched them around, but you can see I'm grabbing the tool here and I'm testing the background color and then I'm going to test the foreground color. And this is passing on AA for large print and passing on AA for normal print because the contrast is high enough. So I was just showing you here, I can't test that other one because it's below the tester, but normally if you're testing on a web page or on a book, you can use that one. Or you can apply it, or you can add a separate app and use it that way. But this one here as a sample would not pass because the contrast is not high enough between the words and the background. And I know for this is an extreme example, but the color contrast will take into consideration it will take into consideration the pattern as well. So you do want to make sure that your thinking about that again from the design moving forward. So the
Sorry, Emma,
yeah.
just a quick question. Someone wants to know what the color contrast checker extension is called.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I think it's literally just called this. So if you go to your Chrome store, I think if you type in color contrast checker, then it will come up. But there's a million of them, and they as long as they're showing you pass they're and for large AA and then for normal AA, we know that they're taking the WCAG requirements into consideration. So yeah, anything that shows these here. Thank you very much for the question. Okay. And then next previous navigation is the next one that you definitely want to include from code list 196. And really all that one means is that proper headings have been coded so that people using AT can move through the document forward and back without going back to the table of contents or bookmarks. And then lastly, link purposes clear. That's, you know, everyone is kind of doing that. It's industry standard. I have seen people try and get creative sometimes with their link colors, but I always say best to just stick with what works for this. We don't really need to reinvent the wheel, keeping it that dark blue so that it's different from the color of the regular text around it. And then to be fully accessible, they do recommend that you add the an explainer like this, publisher website or link to specific book or whatever, so that they know what the link is for and they don't have to wait for the whole thing to be spelled out before deciding whether they want to move on or not. When I say they, I mean people, any end user using AT. Okay, so that was the section on the separate features. Any questions on the separate features or anything like that? Or any other questions to this point? The next little section is going to be on where you can put the accessible metadata in a few different places. And then I'm going to actually show you putting it into the spreadsheet in CoreSource. Okay. So we do have, oh, that's nice and out of order. There's always at least one side. So these are the options when it comes to, okay, you've got all of those features that we just went over. You've looked at the web PDF, you know whether or not it's accessible. What do I do with this information now? Okay, so the ultimate goal is to get it to the vendor and the end user. We are starting to see vendors processing and displaying the accessibility metadata, which is very exciting. Kobo recently has started displaying it. I should have included a slide with that. I'm just realizing would have been a lovely idea because it looks amazing. It's on the main product page. It's very exciting. It's been years and years of work to get that sorted. So we're so glad to see that happening. And I'll also note from a vendor, or sorry, from a metadata perspective, CoreSource is actually launching tomorrow at 3 p.m. A final update that will be sending Onyx 3 and 3.1 to a number of vendors, including Amazon, Hoopla, Overdrive, and there's a few others, but essentially a lot of vendors were still only accepting 2.1. So even if you were doing the work of adding in your metadata, it wasn't going to all vendors, but now as of tomorrow, it will. So I will be sending out a reminder to any of the eBound publishers, get your accessible metadata in and then do a refresh of all of your metadata to all vendors because it will actually be processed and appearing now, which is very exciting. So where can you put your accessible metadata? Directly into CoreSource. Right in the UI is option 1. And then I will show you a little bit on how to do that. You can, of course, use your Onyx provider. As I don't have, I have some samples of this, but obviously there's a few different Onyx providers you can go with. So if you do need help adding it in to your Onyx provider, then you can contact them to get instructions on that. And then what a lot of our publishers still use is the spreadsheet, and I'll go over that quickly as well. Okay, so first up, CoreSource UI. This is what it looks like. So unfortunately, you do have to do it for each title. It would be great if there was a way to just duplicate and add it to a bunch of titles at once, but you can't. Unfortunately, only certain fields are flex fields, meaning, or free fields, some people call them, meaning you can add things to it, such as the description and the compliance certification by. Essentially, it just won't process, or it won't let you save it if it's not an open field. But the main ones that we would want to see filled out would be for web PDF would be the summary, and that's pretty much it. Okay. The second option, oops. The second option is the Onyx provider. And again, if you need to contact them about this, you're talking about product form feature and code list 196. I'm going to give you a little demo here of what it looks like to use Book Connect, which is our, I wouldn't say partners, but we work closely with them on many projects, our Canadian Onyx provider based out of the East Coast. And this is what it looks like in their UI. So this is the accessibility section. So you would just click on edit, and then it will give you a list. So of course we've got the accessibility summary here, and I gave you that template earlier. So you would pop that in here, and then you would go down and you would just pick all of the, see again, so this is listed slightly differently than what I listed, because again, I was using the CoreSource terminology. I think a couple of them might have slightly different, but the numbers will be the same. So you know that you can add 5, you know that you can add 11, that you can add, this one's slightly different in here too, 13, but you just go based on the numbers, because the numbers never change, but sometimes this wording does, which makes it nice and confusing. Some of these ones are slightly different wording too, use of color versus use of contrast, but like I said, if you use the numbers, you'll be okay. And then I also just wanted to show, so these ones in this Onyx provider, these are the freeform fields or the flex fields. So the only other one that you could potentially add for a web PDF would be this one here. So publisher's web page for detail. So say you had a page on accessibility, your press's kind of view on accessibility. If this would be a great spot to connect to that and let the potential end user know that you're making efforts. Maybe you're only a certain way through your backlist and making them accessible. So you could certainly add this here and give a little update that way. But this is this and then the summary are the only freeform sections that you would need to use. So this is what it looks like in this spreadsheet. So now this spreadsheet is used to create metadata to ingest into CoreSource. But I know that other aggregators also have spreadsheets, so this probably isn't super foreign to anyone. But this is what it looks like here. And again, it's a bit confusing because it makes it look like each section is freeform where you can add some kind of description to it. It's not, it just looks like it is. It's fake. Only certain ones will allow you to actually type into the description section. And if that isn't one of those sections, such as table contents navigation, the file will fail or it'll give an error, or it might just ignore it depending on the setup or the system that you're using. But I am just gonna quickly go through the spreadsheet because I did want to show what it where it appears on there and what it looks like. And of course, whenever I'm on a call for some reason, this likes to act up. There we go. Just gonna move this down. Okay, so I've got the spreadsheet open here. So again, this is the core source metadata spreadsheet. So this is starting at column GI in the current spreadsheet. And I am going to go through where you can download the most up-to-date spreadsheet, because it's come to my attention recently that people don't know that they have access to this and that they should be kind of getting rid of their old spreadsheet and updating to the new one every once in a while. So I think this one has been out, or a version of this one with the accessibility metadata has been out for about a year now. And again, they start on column GI. So that's a good thing to make a note of if you're ever feeling lost in this spreadsheet. This is one of the ones that I give out to our publishers with sample data in it already. So I have things highlighted in a way here that tells publishers whether or not they need to change the information. And you do have to scroll, you do have to scroll for quite a ways before you get to the column. That's why it's good to know that you're looking for column GI, so you can just scroll all the way over. Okay, so again, these are repeatable. The version that you download might not have as many sections as you need. So I can't remember how many of the features we had there. This is set up for an EPUB version, but you would only need to use as many of these as were listed on that slide 12. Although these ones, so like this one would be removed because we don't have that in the web PDF, but I think we do, and then this one would be removed as well. So again, you're going through and you're just adding in whichever number associates with the feature and then copying it down and only adding in a description for your summary. And if you wanted to add that other one that let's say you replace this one and you wanted to add in publisher web page for detailed accessibility information. So you see they have it written kind of differently there. And then I'm copying it down. And then in here, you could put it's free form. I'm not sure how much space you have here, but you could put something in here. This is listed as a link right now, but I would have to take off. But and then accessibility information and copy it down. So that is how the spreadsheet works. You then do have to save it with your publisher name and the date, and then upload directly into CoreSource. So I also just want to go, so that's a lot of information about what needs to be done for each individual web PDF, but I just wanted to give some clarity on kind of the steps. So if we're going back over everything that we just went through, what was that process? How do we do it going forward? So this is a great kind of summer task while things are a little bit calmer. I suppose you don't have a ton of time before the start of before June 28th, but a great task to just sort of pick away at one title at a time. So going into your web PDF, downloading it from CoreSource or wherever you have it, and then running that accessibility report in Acrobat. And then of course you've got to look at those two manual checks that you're going to have, the logical reading order and then the color contrast. If everything else passes though, you know that you can add that metadata, all of those features from slide 12 via either the spreadsheet, your UI, or an Onyx provider. And then once that's updated in whatever houses your Onyx, you can resend the metadata to all vendors for that title. So you could do this in batches or, you know, seasonally, whatever works to sort of get things up to speed. And I know that people do start to feel a little bit overwhelmed when we get here. Why are we doing this? You know, well, other than the fact that we need to meet these requirements, it's kind of deeper than that. Accessible books are just better books for everyone. And not to mention that if you are proving that your books are accessible, doing the work to make sure that the features are there, that they're included in the Onyx, then you're opening up a larger market. And if you aren't putting these features in, but you do have them, your title could be bypassed by an end user, because if they don't see, if they're starting to be able to access that information, all of the accessibility information on vendor sites now, if your features aren't there and it's something that they need, then you could miss out on that sale, right? So it's the same as with any metadata. More metadata, the better, because it allows the end user kind of more access into what is in the book. And a quick note here as well, I didn't go over in slide 12, I didn't go over accessible math content. Oh, sorry, I lied. I must have added another slide. It's slide 11. I didn't add accessible math content here because we don't see a lot of academic math textbooks coming through. But there are specific features like math and that would need to be added as well. So do take a look at code list 196 and see if there are any other specific features that could be added. Again, anything that you can add, you should, but make sure you have a really clear understanding of what it is before you add it. And again, these are how many do we have? 1, 2, 3. So these are the 9 that you can definitely add if your accessible report is passed. Okay. And back to here. So moving forward, kind of a plan, publisher workflow, what does that look like? So you want to make sure that you're adding this process into your regular metadata workflow. And this is talking about backlist titles. So anything that hasn't already, that you're kind of not sure about. This should be kind of a process that you're picking away at to get your backlist squared away. But for frontlist titles, you can just ensure that conversion partners are certified. It's still, Benetech is still certifying vendors. So working with certified conversion houses that have that GCA stamp and Benetech certification are a great place to start. Those are all the conversion partners that eBound works with. So we only work with certified conversion partners because we've made that commitment a long time ago, because we know how important this work is. And how complex it is, and how important it is that a conversion partner keeps up to date and with the changes with accessibility, because things are evolving all the time. Another big thing is ensuring that you're ordering accessible web PDFs. Different conversion houses have different terminology for this. So like I said before, some of them will call it a standard PDF. Some of them will call it just a PDF. You want to make sure that when you're ordering your web PDF, that you're ordering it as accessible. Again, so that's for frontlist. And again, a note on if that web PDF, if in the web PDF you have text and then the image is right beside it, could you chat with the author about letting go of, could the image be on top of the text instead of wrapping around it? Is that a huge deal? So something that we say in this vein in the world of accessibility is talking with authors from the beginning, so keeping that born accessible content in mind, chatting with authors about letting go of the digital version of the book being a print replica of the original, because sometimes you do need to let go of that exact form, that exact layout in order to get the same functionality and a fully accessible file. So accessible means inclusive, means everybody gets the book at the same time is the goal, right? So that they don't have to wait for a Braille version to be produced. They can access whatever format that they need. So if there is an option to say, can we make this into a reflowable EPUB as well? That's a really good one to take, because again, reflowable EPUB is kind of the standard for a reason. Okay. And then lastly, of course, if you have backlist and you don't have the time to start doing this work one at a time, you can submit your backlist titles for a free remediation quote through eBound. It just involves filling out what we call our RFQ, request for quote spreadsheet, and then compiling the print PDFs and sending them along. And you can get a quote with no obligation to get the work done from one of our providers, and it will just go over the cost of taking the web PDF from what it is to fully accessible. So if there are no other questions, we can end it there, and I will thank everyone for attending. I hope it was useful, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thanks very much, everyone.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Once again, thank you for joining eBound today. We hope you have a great afternoon, and please send any questions directly to Emma or myself, and we'll be sure to answer them. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.